Okay, Assalamualaikum and very good morning everyone. So this is FIN420, Financial Management. But before we start, let me share with you
Waalaikumsalam.
so this is where I share dalam online class ni, dalam online class schedule ni. This is where I share the Google Meet punya link for today, for example. Link, and don't forget to record your attendance juga. Alright, you'll be given from 15 minutes before class sampailah 15 minutes after the class ended nanti. So meaning for our class today, you akan ada masa sampai pukul 1 sekejap lagi. For those yang belum record, so you boleh record kat sini. I'm not sure whether your view sama ke tak, but for me, this would be my view lah. So siapa yang tak either memang tak datang lagi ataupun tak datang ataupun belum record, please check your attendance, okay, kat sini, and I will verify by looking at the list kejap lagi. And on top of this, dekat sini, dekat announcement pun ada kan. This is to A. Right, for every time I buat the online class punya schedule, you boleh record dekat sini, dekat dalam announcement ni. So you boleh, like I said lah, within the time frame, 15 minutes before sampai 15 minutes after the class, so you boleh record your attendance dekat sini. Okay, and satu lagi dalam group yang sama, okay, all the content, meaning in terms of the lecture notes dengan some passing question pun I upload dekat dalam ni. So you can download here lah. So far I baru letak 5 files lah, but from time to time we'll upload more kat dalam ni. And on top of these two yang you kena tahu, online class, the announcement, the group content, and satu lagi dalam I discuss lah. Okay, so every week kita akan discuss new things. So please check regularly lah kat dalam ni especially nanti tiba-tiba ada assignment ke, I will announce kat dalam ni maybe, then I will share with you somewhere, maybe dalam assignment kat sini. Okay, but for time being I tak letak apa-apa lagi lah under the continuous assessment. Okay, ataupun ada quiz ke, I might use this one. Right. Anyway, so like I said, kita akan utilize fully our Q future. So before we start with our content, let we go through what is financial management. Okay, and first of all, I would like to introduce myself. So siapa yang tak pernah masuk lagi my class maybe. Okay, my name is Mak Faizal Basri. Okay, I got my PhD in Islamic Finance from Durham University in the UK. And the rest, kalau nampak kat situ my background memang mostly from UiTM. So I'm proud to say I'm a product of UiTM. Came from my diploma, my degree, my masters, everything is from UiTM. Case mostly Shah Alam lah, I can say. Masa tu Shah Alam but nowadays semua dah pindah pun Shah Alam, but those time macam dah lama sangat Okay, tak apa. It was in Shah Alam lah masa tu. And I pernah working in the industry before. Okay, before I joined balik UiTM as a lecturer. But currently, I'm attached with UPSI, Tanjung Malim. I left UiTM 2017. 2017 I left UiTM, I joined UPSI until now. Okay, that's my mobile number and also my email address. Okay, but like I said, official things mostly kita akan communicate, distribute using UFuture dari segi assignmentnya, quizzes, distribution of information related to assignment, instruction, notes, everything akan gunakan medium UFuture. Okay, this is more on unofficial ataupun something yang nak discuss fast. Contohnya ada certain question, you can access to my mobile number jugalah kat situ. Okay, WhatsApp only obviously. Right? So 3 credit hours. By the way, financial management ni will be the introductory paper for finance. Since we have two groups ataupun there are potentially two audience, I can say. Okay, so most of you ataupun some of you mungkin buat BBA Operations Management. So this FIN420 will be one of the two finance papers that you have to take. So first one is FIN420, Financial Management. And later nanti you have to take FIN533, which is Personal Financial Planning. So the difference between the two, this FIN420 is more on the corporate side, meaning from business point of view. So you are managing finance for business. Okay, whereas FIN533 later, it's more on managing finance for individuals, for personal level, personal financial planning. Okay, that's for operations management. But for finance degree, BBA finance, obviously this is just a starting for you lah. You have a lot more finance papers. Okay, this is just like intro to finance to you. Okay, so you akan ada banyak lagi lah paper finance yang lain. Termasuklah FIN533 tadi. Right, so this course will covers a lot of things actually. Kita ada 11 topics altogether. Okay, kita ada 7 kali meeting. We have 11 topics, so you can foresee lah how I need to shrink ataupun I need to squeeze 11 topics into 7 separate meetings. Right, so among others, we have, for example, the financial ratios topic, the cash budgets, the concept of time value of money, okay, working capital management, sources of financing, and also capital budgeting. So altogether, we have 11 topics like this. Okay. So for example, for today, all right, I will try to cover as much as possible from the first 3 topics. 3 topik pertama ni, I nak try to. Obviously, I'll be too ambitious kalau nak habiskan semua lah. I don't think so I can finish all. Okay, 1, 2 ni memang boleh habis lah for sure. But for topic number 3 ni, partial je, not even half kot. Maybe a quarter of the topic I akan try to cover today. So the first 3 topics, I akan habiskan try minggu ni. And then we have topic number 4, financial planning and forecasting. So this is another week, financial planning and forecasting. This is standalone. Ni selalunya week 2 lah ataupun second session. And then we have working capital management, which is the introduction to topic 6 and 7. So topic 5, 6 and 7 ni will be another subtopics like I say. So working capital ni sebenarnya melibatkan current assets. So under current assets, we have 4 different assets: cash, marketable securities, account receivable, and inventory. So how to manage all of these assets is based on these 5, 6, and 7. Okay, and then we have 2 financings. Okay, short-term and long-term financing. Okay, bila group ni bukan masuk, dia akan berlaku dalam minggu yang sama. Sometimes it may take more than 1 week. So short-term dengan long-term ni, obviously you cannot do it on the same week sebab dia panjang topik dia. But they are related somehow, the short-term and also the long-term financing. Okay, then we have capital budgeting and mathematics of finance. So this is basically the concept of time value of money. Okay, time value of money. So here we are, the 11 topics. As I said tadi, we have to squeeze most of the topics ni dalam 7 minggu. Okay, so therefore our meetings yang 7 kali itu, I will focus more on the calculation side because a lot of calculations involved here. Okay, I can say about 80-85% of the syllabus ni memang melibatkan calculations. The only topics yang tak ada calculation would be this one. Ni tak ada calculation, topic 1. And also this topic 5. Sebab topic 5 ni just introduction to 6 and 7. So 6 and 7 ni obviously ada calculation lah. But as an introductory, topic number 5 tak ada calculation. So itu je, tak ada calculation. The rest we have calculations. Okay. Kalau ada soalan, just let me know. Next, kita nak tengok the assessments. Okay, this assessment is based on last semester. Hopefully tak ada perubahan. I haven't heard anything from the coordinator in terms of changes to the assessments. Okay, as you all know, FIN420 is one of the course that we don't have final exam. Even before online classes macam ni, we don't have final exam anymore. Okay, so basically the 100% ni comes from the ongoing assessment, 100%. Okay, so here as you can see, we have the first element, the test element. So we have two tests, which will give you a combined 30%. Okay, 30% value come from tests. So since we have test 1 and test 2, obviously it will cover different sections of the syllabus lah. So if you go back here, so our first test selalunya akan cover this part. Okay, for our first test. Okay, financial planning and forecasting. Sebab for the first three ni, financial ratio analysis ni, selalunya kita akan test ni dalam case study ataupun group assignment. Okay, group assignment, GA group assignment. Okay, so group assignment, kita akan buat the first three topics. Topic 4 ni is our first test. Okay, sebab dalam financial planning forecasting ni ada dua statements that we need to prepare. Okay, so this will be test dalam first test. Okay, so for the second test, selalunya it will be towards the end lah. Towards the end. 8, 9, 10 ni. This will be our test tu kat sini. So how about the rest? So the rest will be covered dalam assignments. Okay, will be part of your assignments. So first test, like I said, financial planning and forecasting. Test 2 will be towards the end tu, the financing, the capital budgeting. Case study, the first three topics. And on top of case study, these two sebenarnya you boleh nampak dia sebagai satu ni nampak satu task sebab the output of your group project first is in written format. So written format will be in the case study format yang 30% ni. And on top of that, you need to present your finding. So the presentation tu masuk dekat sini. So 50% ni you akan nampak lah kepentingan ni datang daripada our first three topics ni. Okay, datang daripada first three topic untuk the 50%. So this one, the rest lah. Yang tak masuk dalam test, yang tak ada dalam group project, akan ada individual assignment. So maybe ada 10% each. Okay, cover lah topik 6, 7 contohnya ataupun 11 kalau tak sempat nak masuk dalam test kan, sebab kalau semua masuk test tu banyak so I have to split some. So expect at least 2 individual assignment. So that's how we test all the 11 topics for this course. Okay, so that's how 100% punya distribution of marks. Okay, no final assessment, no final exam. We don't have the final exam for this course since 2019. Okay, so 2018 was the last time yang ada final exam. Since 2019 onwards, we don't have final exam anymore for this course. Memang 100% 100% ongoing assessment. Okay, ada soalan tak? Not yet, good. So if there's no questions, let's go straight to topic number 1. Okay, topic number 1 ni memang I akan go very quickly je. I cannot afford to go through every single slide yang ada dalam ni. Nanti tolong baca on your own. Okay, but I will go through the earlier parts, at least 1.1 tu je boleh sempat nak explain kat dalam ni. The introduction, what is finance is all about, what are the importance of finance, and how we manage the finance part of the business. Okay. So first, what is finance? So this is from an author lah. Kalau finance buku finance tu, one of the main ataupun prominent author is Gitman. So ni dalam salah satu buku dia. They mention finance can be defined as the art and science of managing money. So when we say managing money, okay, it's not about when we have the money. We have to manage the money when we don't have the money as well. So that's why dalam konsep finance, even in economy juga, okay, we're gonna have two parties. Kita akan ada surplus party and we're gonna have deficit party. So who are those surplus? Those with extra fund. Okay, those with extra fund will be part of surplus party. So siapa pula yang deficit? Deficit will be those with insufficient fund. Okay, yang tak cukup, bukan dia tak ada langsung, they don't have enough fund. Okay, so when we have these two positions, obviously we have two different decision making to make. Okay, so that's why in finance, kita kena manage both sides. Kita bukan manage bila kita ada duit je. We also needs to manage when we don't have enough funds. So what kind of decision making we need to make? For example, during surplus positions, kita ada extra fund. This is where we need to make decisions relating to investment. Okay, kita kena invest lah duit. Kita ada extra fund kan. Takkan kita nak simpan je, we have to invest. Okay, and for those in the deficit positions with insufficient funds, they need to think about financing ataupun borrowing. Okay, ataupun borrowing. Okay, they need to think where to borrow, which are considered the best options to borrow, and the most efficient lah ataupun the most cost-effective funding that they can get. Right. So when we said art and science of managing money, we need to manage both sides. Okay, surplus and deficit. So if we have excess of fund, we need to think where would be the best investment. Okay, and when we are in the deficit positions, we need to think where we can borrow money from. Okay, so that's why it will involve with financial decisions. Especially for example here, introduction of new product dengan new asset ni basically when we talk about investment lah. Kita bila cerita investment bukan bermaksud kita invest in certain markets je. Sometimes bila kita nak invest, bila nak launch new product, kita kena keluarkan duit untuk R&D, kita kena invest in marketing and so on. So new products requires money. Sama juga kalau nak purchase new assets, you nak beli new machines untuk your productions, manufacturing. So memerlukan investment as well. Okay, so new product and new assets akan diperlukan when we want to do investment. Okay, similarly, if you want to borrow money, so among others, you can borrow from the bank, maybe borrowing from the bank. Okay, ataupun alternatively, kalau you tak nak borrow from the bank, you can issue instruments. Okay, what kind of instruments? Kita boleh issue stocks ataupun shares, or we can issue debts instruments, hutang. Okay, kenapa hutang di-issue? Okay, certain markets allow us to sell instruments, jual instruments. Okay, so those instrument bila kita jual, kita boleh dapat funding. We sell, people will buy. Okay, so the buy and sell of instruments tu akan menyebabkan kita boleh dapat funding. Right, so that's how we decide lah with regards to finance. So finance is concerned with the process, okay, and obviously there are parties involved. Even though like I said kita ada surplus dengan deficit, sebenarnya there are institutions, okay, and also markets with the instruments yang akan menyebabkan the money can be transferred from one end to another end. Okay, those from surplus will flow the money to the those with deficits. Okay, so that's the finance is all about lah. That's the processnya. And for those yang tak bekerja dalam financial background, okay, ataupun in the finance related departments, by knowing ataupun understand the concept of finance, it will be benefits for you because you can use it to discuss, okay, to discuss finance related issues with the finance department. You can argue ataupun raise your case related to purchasing of assets, for example, so that you dah faham konsep dia kan, and you can argue with facts and figures why you need to invest on certain things because you have the knowledge, okay, especially for those yang tak bekerja dalam finance department lah. So that's the importance of finance. Anyway, remember tadi kita ada surplus and deficit, so I recap balik kat sini. We have surplus and we have deficit here. So surplus, those with excess; deficit, those with insufficient funds. Okay. In the world that we live today, okay, these two parties tak boleh berjumpa kalau tak ada these two entities, I can say. Okay, we have the middleman, intermediary, so that's why dia panggil intermediary, orang tengah. We have two parts, which is first is FI, financial institutions, and we also have financial market yang bawah ni. And both serve different reason, different purpose, but both are considered as intermediary, atas ataupun orang tengah, middleman between the two parties. So how their function? Okay, by the way, when we talk about financial institutions, just imagine these are banks. Okay, financial institutions adalah bank. Okay, in Malaysia kita ada banyak jenis bank. For example, we have the first part will be commercial bank. Okay, bank yang biasa nampak on the street tu, yang merata-rata ada commercial banks, the Mi banks, public banks, CIMBs, lagi AFINs, M banks, all the foreign banks juga lah, HSBC, Standard Chartered, OCBC and whatnot. Those are commercial banks. So in fact, the largest banks networks in the country are commercial banks. Dia ada banyak, all over the place. Okay, this including the Islamic banks as well, because their function are actually similar like commercial banks. They offer products for surplus and product for deficit juga. Okay, what kind of products for commercial banks? Dia akan issue ataupun dia akan offer products like deposits untuk surplus. Surplus, remember, people who have access of funds, dia boleh deposit dengan commercial banks. Okay, what kind of deposits? Kita ada savings account, kita ada current accounts, we have fixed deposits, for example. So people with money will deposit in the bank. Okay, we have various types of products. So that's why FI ni will be in the middle, because they will receive fund from here, from surplus ni tadi, deposits contohnya. Okay, dia akan deposit dalam financial institutions, the surplus party ni tadi. So they deposit in a form of deposit accounts. Okay, so financial institution as a middleman akan pull the money. They will pull the money and then they will channel. That's why the word kat sini, they channel. They channel the deposits to the deficit in a form of financing ataupun loans. So for those yang deficit, dia akan pergi dekat FI juga, which is the banks, untuk buat pinjaman. Okay, from deposits into loans. Okay, so they charge kat sini, dia bukan charge lah, maknanya dia pay back the depositors a certain amount of money, but they will charge a higher rates of return to these parts of the parties. Okay, so besides commercial, kita ada lagi contoh macam investment bank juga. Okay, those yang ada nama investment dekat belakang tu, those are investment banks. Macam kalau Maybank, dia ada Maybank Investments. M-Bank, dia ada M Investments, for example. CIMB Investment, and so on lah. Okay, so that's how the intermediary roles for FI applies to our market lah, financial institutions. Okay, money come from depositors yang ada duit extra ni masuk dalam FI kumpulkan, and then they will channel to the deficit. So deficit yang tak ada enough ataupun insufficient funds tadi akan buat pinjaman lah in the form of housing loans, personal loans, business loans, hire purchase, mortgage and whatnot lah. Semua akan berlaku dekat sini. Okay, so that's the role of financial institution. So as a business, tadi ingat we are managing money. So we are in the surplus position, kita akan deposit lah dalam FI. Same time kalau kita ada masalah dengan kita punya funding, we will go to the FI for financing, buat term loans ke, okay, pinjaman business ke. Right, so these are the important parties for business. That's number one, financial institutions. Alternatively, kita boleh utilize another entity, which is the financial markets. Okay, so as individual, kebanyakan kita memang nampak FI lah. Kita tak cukup duit, kita pergi bank as an individual. But as for companies, they are the alternative. Okay, dia boleh pergi financial markets. Okay, dah dengar diorang nak masuk tadi sorry. For the financial market, okay, we have two more key financial markets. Okay, dalam financial market itself lah. Kita ada money markets and we have capital markets. So what's the difference between the two? Is the time frame. For money market, usually it will involve short-term instruments, whereas for capital market, it involve more on the long-term instruments. But the functions of the financial market, similar like FI sebenarnya, similar like banks, they are the middlemen, they are the supplier, ataupun they are a platform whereby the surplus and the deficit units akan bertemu. Cuma bezanya, they don't have deposits and loans. Okay, in financial markets, it's more on buyers and sellers. Okay, buyers and sellers of what? Buyers and sellers of financial instruments. We have what we call as financial instruments. So apakah itu financial instruments? So every markets have different financial instruments. For short term ataupun under money market, we call them marketable securities. Okay, marketable securities. So what does it mean, marketable securities? Marketable securities are instruments that being sold, buy and sell ataupun bought and sold. For short-term basis, how short? Usually, dia punya transaction tu less than 1 year. Okay, the transaction must be within 1 year. Meaning dia punya maturity tu maturity will be within 1 year. But for capital market, obviously anything more than 1 year. So under capital market, we have instruments like bonds and also stocks. Okay, apa beza dia? Bonds, this is debt, hutang. Kalau stock, this is equity. Okay, ownership shares. Okay, yang you nampak dalam bursa Malaysia yang trading shares tu kan, share market, short stocks, equity. Okay, so for every elements here, marketable securities ke, bonds ke, stocks ke, we have two parts juga. We have the deficit and the surplus. The difference would be those yang seller, okay, seller akan jual all the financial instruments. For the short term, dia boleh jual marketable securities. For example, we have kalau kat Malaysia kita ada Malaysian Government Securities. Okay, ataupun in short kita panggil dia MGS. Okay, remember when we talk about surplus and deficit, besides the businesses, kita ada juga pihak daripada government dengan individuals. We don't forget about that. So government can be the deficit unit juga. Government needs money, they needs funding. Most of the time they needs money pun. So if they don't have enough cash flows, okay, duit yang masuk tu tak cukup nak cover the operations, for example, they can sell instruments. Okay, either short-term basis or long-term basis. So for example, if they have insufficient of funds for the first 6 months, 6 bulan pertama ni dia tak cukup fund. what they can do, they can sell Malaysian government securities ni. Okay, usually for government, dia akan jual melalui bank negara. Okay, so they are the deficit units, government contohnya. Okay, so what they do, they go to the financial markets, dalam case ni money market, and offer this Malaysian government securities to the investor. So siapa yang akan beli? So those in the surplus jugalah. So katakanlah salah satu is the business, your company. Your company has money and see, oh, government issue new MGS in the financial markets. So what you do, you will buy. Okay, you will buy instruments in the financial markets. Buy, or in other words, you invest lah. You invest. Okay, yang deficit tadi, what they do, they sell. So, dia jual di dalam financial market. So, kalau tadi tu dia nampak dia flow in and out financial institution, but here it will be a meeting point. Financial market ni will be meeting point. So, that's why dia tulis sini as a forum, as a meeting point between two parties, the surplus and deficit. So, deficit akan jual dalam financial market, so the investor akan beli dekat sini. So, bila dia jual, dia dapat funds. Okay, so that's the purpose why they want to sell the instrument at the first place, sebab dia nak funding. Kalau dengan FI tadi dia pinjam kan dengan FI. But for FM, dia akan jual instruments in the markets and the investor will buy from the financial markets. And in return, dia jual. Dalam konsep ni dia bukan jual beli lepas tu habis je, tak. The deficit units ni you have to redeem balik. Okay, they have to redeem back, especially kalau dia ada maturity lah, they will have to redeem it back. Meaning they have to repurchase it back from the buyer together with the return. Okay, that's why investor need invest at the first place, because they want the return. Okay, itu contoh from marketable securities short-term basis. They also can use longer terms. Okay, bonds. Malaysian government banyak je issue bonds long-term basis in order to generate funds. Okay, for companies, corporates, they can issue bonds juga. Or alternatively, kalau dia tak nak terlibat dengan hutang, debts, they can issue stocks. Okay, in order to get more funding as well. Cuma kalau di issue stocks, dia akan ada new shareholders lah coming in their business. Okay, so these are long-term instruments. Okay, so that's the nature, how finance is all about. Okay, interrelated with the financial markets, the financial institutions, how they interact between one and another, and all because of these two positions. Okay, surplus and deficit, and how they want to, sebab banyak decision kena buat ni. Kalau surplus nak deposit kat mana, nak kat FI ke kat FM. Okay, kalau deficit, where to borrow? Nak borrow from the banks directly or go to financial markets, contohnya. So there's a lot of decisions needs to be made lah. So this is what we will discuss throughout the semester. So nanti yang the rest, nanti tolong baca for topic number 1. But before we determine whether we are in the surplus or deficit, we need to understand our current positions. Kita kena faham how is the performance and the health of the company. So in order to determine the health of the company, we need to look at this one. Kita dah masuk topik number 2 sekarang. Topic number 2, which is to understand the financial statements. So for these financial statements, kita akan go through, dia ada banyak sebenarnya, but we gonna go through the first 2. Okay, the 2 most important statements, right? And how to get this information kalau dalam companies, we just look at the annual reports lah. We go to the annual reports of the company. Okay, and to access these annual reports easily, okay, we go to those with Berhad status, Berhad companies. Because the requirement for Berhad companies is to publish their annual reports and made it available to the public. Okay, nama pun Berhad ni is public listed kan. So you need to make your company's report made available to the public. Okay, so that's why nanti bila you nak buat project, sebab your project like I said, is based on the first three topics, which is the financial ratios. Go for public companies, okay, with berhad status ni lah, so that you can access the annual reports ni easily and freely directly from their website. Okay, so that's how kita akan go through nantilah when we talk about assignments. Okay, but before we go to the assignment parts, let's look at the key financial statements. Okay, you can stop me anytime kalau tak sure sebab Google Meet ni memang what I can see is actually my slide je. I cannot see you all pun sebenarnya. Even myself pun I cannot see. So I just like talking in front of the slideshow ni. So please ask any question kalau perlu lah, kalau nak tanya. Just stop me anytime. But anyway, so the key financial statement represent a raw material for financial analysis. So financial analysis ni kita akan buat dalam topic 3 nanti. Topic 3. But in order to do the financial analysis, obviously we need to understand the raw material. Okay, that's what we are doing now in topic number 2. So we have a few financial statements, like I said, tapi kita akan focus on the first two saja, which is the first one is known as the balance sheet. Nowadays, it also known as statement of financial position. Okay, so this is the alternative name. Walaupun nama alternative, but most of the companies nowadays, if you do open the annual reports, they use these terms, statement of financial positions. Okay, and this statement of financial positions basically will represent the snapshot of the company. So what does it mean by snapshot? By looking at the balance sheet, we can quickly glance through the structure of the company. Okay, what kind of structure? So as you all dah belajar account before this kan, I assume. The balance sheet ni dia ada tiga categories ataupun 3 items. Okay, dia boleh buat dalam bentuk, let's say macam T account like this. You're gonna have one side as assets. Okay, on the other sides you have liabilities. And you have equity. Okay, so this is your balance sheet. So these two sides must be balanced, hence the name balance sheet kan. So the assets values must be balanced out with the liabilities and equity values. Okay, so when we talk about snapshot of the company, we can see if the company, let's say, has 100 million worth of assets, katakanlah, they have a total assets worth 100 million ringgit. We know these sides on the right hand side ni, the value must be equals to 100 million as well. However, we want to know from this 100 million, how much actually comes from liabilities, how much comes from equity. If you remember earlier, I said liabilities refers to debts, hutang. Equity represents ownership, meaning comes from the shareholders. So if the majority of the money, majority of the values ni comes from liabilities, let's say lah kat sini, I don't know, 70 million, contohnya lah. And equity only 30 million, plus total 100 kan. So if liability 70, equity will be 30 million. So we can conclude that these companies rely heavily on that. 70% of these assets comes from liabilities, comes from debt, hutang. So is it good ataupun healthy positions? Obviously not. Kalau hutang terlalu banyak, 70 million. Okay, but if you compare another company, let's say liability dia 20 million je. So obviously the equity will be 80 million, contohnya. Again, we can see the snapshot of the company by looking at this and you say, okay, this company has less debts. But obviously there's a pros and cons lah with regards to the structure of the company. Okay, we don't want to be extreme in terms of the liabilities and equity. And dia bukanlah even 50-50 pun to be the best. Okay, there's always, you need to have element of liabilities in your balance sheet ataupun dalam account you, or else the company cannot grow Okay, to grow, they need to borrow money somehow. Okay. Second statement is the income statement. Okay, the income statement. So under income statement, dia ada nama lainnya juga. It's also known as statement of financial position. Financial performance. If you have tadi statement of financial position ni, statement of financial positions, whereby we want to see the positioning of their assets and liabilities. For income statement, is also known as statement of financial performance. We want to see how they perform. Okay, when we talk about performance, obviously we want to see their profits. Okay, so cash flow ni nanti kita tak go through lah. Semua cash flow ni dia akan involve in cash. Cuma untuk income statement, we will look into the inflows, duit masuk, and we're going to look at the outflows, duit keluar. Okay, the expenses. So the revenues minus expenses, obviously, if it's positive, meaning the revenues is more than expenses, the company can get profits. But if it's the other way around, meaning the revenues is less than the expenses, then the company might suffer loss. Okay, loss of the company lah. Okay. Ada soalan so far? Okay, kalau tak ada, maybe I bagi you quick break kejap lah, 5 minutes break before you move on to the detail. Tadi tu baru just overview of balance sheet income statement. Now I will go into detail. What are the items under balance sheets? What are the items under income statement? And later on, how to analyze those statements. Okay. So let's take 5 lah. Kejap. Okay. I'll see you guys sekarang 11.32. So around 11.37, we will continue with topic number 2 and some ataupun partial for topic number 3. Okay, so let's take 5. Okay, let's continue with the details. Okay. Okay, records. Oh, everything's on. Okay. So now we're going to look into details, the items under the balance sheet and also income statement. Okay, so the firm's balance sheet will show the financial position. So again, that's why nama dia financial position, statement of financial position tadi. At one point in time, okay, usually the last day of calendar or the fiscal year. Okay, usually lah, from business perspective, we're going to call them as a financial year end. Okay, financial year end. And for businesses, there's no standard in terms of what would be their financial year end. Kalau macam ni, kalau kita kata the final day of the calendar, it would be 31st of December. Yes, for financial year end, it can be 31st of December for certain companies. Okay, but some companies might have a different financial year end. For example, they may have 30th of June maybe, or I don't know, 31st of March maybe. What else? 30th of September maybe. Okay, so they might have a different financial year end depending on their operations. However, regardless their financial year end, the statements, the balance sheet ni must consist 1 year. Okay, 1 year's data or 1 year's information relating to the assets, liabilities, and also equity. Right, so it will summarize the firm's resources, which is in the form of assets, and it will be balanced against, like I said, liabilities ataupun debts, and also equity, which is in the form of ownership of the company. So here you see the assets on one side of the equation, and we have liabilities and equity on the other side of the equation. So under assets, supposedly we're going to have two different categories of assets. The first one is known as current assets. Okay, under assets, things that we have ataupun things that we own. The first category will be the current assets. So what does it mean by current assets? Assets that can be acquired or recovered within 1 year. Okay, so that's the definition of current assets. You can acquire or recover within 1 year. So sorry. So meaning it is very much liquid. Okay, nak convert into cash. Ni nak convert very fast. Okay, within 1 year dah boleh convert into cash. So under current assets, we have items like cash itself. We have marketable securities. We have inventories. We have prepaid expenses, for example. So in terms of the detail example, kejap lagi kita go through. But I want to introduce to you the categories first. Okay, we have current assets, number one. Number two, we have kita panggil dia fixed asset. Okay, ataupun sometimes kita panggil dia non-current. So pretty much anything else than the current, dia akan masuk kat sini lah. Okay, selalunya dia punya convertibility into cash, it will take more than 1 year. Okay, anything that requires longer time to be recovered ataupun to acquire benda ni, more than 1 year, kita akan masukkan dia dalam fixed or non-current assets. Okay, items like motor vehicles, land and buildings, plant and equipment. Okay, all of those will be part of fixed ataupun non-current assets. Anything else yang macam intangible assets, macam copyrights pun semua boleh masuk kat dalam ni jugalah, under non-current assets. Okay. So that's our first part under assets. We have two, which is current and fixed. Now we move on to the right hand side, liabilities and equity. For liabilities, in assets, we have current and fixed. For liabilities, okay, the first part of our equation, we're going to have two juga. First, we're going to have current as well, current liabilities. Okay, so the definition of current liabilities, amount due payable within 1 year. Okay, amount due and payable within 1 year. So meaning whatever liabilities that you have and you need to pay immediately. Okay, within immediately until up to 1 year lah. Okay, anything more than 1 year tak boleh masuk current. So here you will see items like account payable, notes payable, accrued expenses, semua masuk dalam current liabilities. Okay, current liabilities. So what does it mean again? It is amount due that you have to pay within 1 year. Right, maximum 1 year. So anything more than 1 year, you kena masuk dalam second category, which is long term. Okay, long term liabilities. Ataupun again, you can use the word non-current kat sini. Non-current liabilities ataupun long term liabilities. So here again, anything more than 1 year, or more payable more than one year. So for long term, you have macam kalau you ada mortgage, company yang ambil mortgage ataupun ada term loans dengan bank for let's say 2 years. Okay, semua akan records under long term liabilities. Okay, anything due more than 1 year will be part under long term liabilities. Okay, so we have four so far, four categories: current asset, fixed asset, current liabilities, long term liabilities. And finally, we have the final part, which is equity. So untuk equity, we don't have category. We don't have categories. We just have fixed items kat sini lah. So under equity, you can see certain items like common, equity, preferred. Okay, common stocks, preferred stocks, retained earning contohnya. Okay, retained earnings tak muat lah. Okay, retaining. By the way, all of the items yang I mention ni ada dekat notes kat belakang. I just browse through bagi you familiar with the terms. Which actually sebenarnya sepatutnya dah go through before this, bila you learn about finance, about accounts. Okay, we have common stocks, preferred stocks, and also retained earnings. So all of these are equity. So this equity represents ownership. Okay, semua ni melambangkan ownership of the company. So shareholders punya funds datang daripada sini. Ni semua portion from shareholders, owner punya contribution of funds datang dalam bentuk equity. Yang lain semua from the liabilities, hutang. Okay. So here we have the format lah, the format of balance sheet that you can see. Not in real life. Format ni tak diguna pakai in real life anymore. Okay, but traditionally this is how the balance sheets looks like. Macam I lukis lah, kita ada T account kan, assets on one side, liabilities and equity on the others. Okay, so here are the items in details now. Kita boleh tengok contoh-contoh. For current, fixed, current liabilities, long term and also equity. I akan add here and there lah, kalau ada additional yang I boleh share. For example, okay, for current assets, sepatutnya kita boleh tambah satu lagi kat sini. The first one is supposed to be cash. Cash would be one of the most liquid assets yang kita akan ada. Okay, the symbol of liquid pun memang cash sebenarnya. So therefore, our first item under current asset selalunya is about cash. Okay, so cash can be in hand, cash dalam tangan, or it can be in the bank. Okay, so cash in the bank pun also will be part of cash juga. Okay, sebab bila kita simpan dalam bank, it's pretty much liquid. You boleh withdraw anytime you want kan, sama ada savings ataupun current accounts. So cash in the bank also will be part of cash as well. Okay, so that's item number 1. And then we have marketable securities. If you remember dalam financial market I mentioned earlier, dalam money market, this is part of it, marketable securities. So marketable securities is actually a form of short-term investment. Okay, as a company, if they have too many cash, alternatively, they boleh liquidate the cash ni and purchase marketable securities. Remember tadi kan kita ada that surplus and deficit kan. So for those yang surplus, they can invest in marketable securities. Okay, that's why nama dia short-term investment tadi. Okay, and when I said short-term, meaning sama jugalah macam definition of current assets, the convertibility tu is within 1 year. Next, we have account receivable. So what does it mean by account receivable? Account receivable means if you do sales or basically you do your sales kan, and you allow your customers to pay on credit basis. Meaning your customer tak bayar cash. Your customer will pay next month, for example, ataupun 2 months from now. Okay, that amount yang masih belum dibayar from your customer will be parked in the account receivable. Dia akan masuk dalam account receivable ni. Let's say lah, I jual barang RM10,000. Okay, and I allow my customer to pay half cash, half utang. Okay, so from that 10,000, 5,000 I akan masuk cash sebab customer dah bayar. That 50,000 cash yang saya cakap tadi baru jual 10,000 So kalau cash 5,000, so the balance 5,000 akan masuk dalam account receivable. Okay, sampailah dia bayar. Bila dia dah bayar, dia akan move into cash. So this amount in account receivable depends on the process ataupun if you allow your customer to pay on credit, it will be huge, the amount of account receivable. Satu lagi, kalau your customer slow in making payments. Okay, kalau dia lambat bayar pun akan menyebabkan your account receivable to be huge in terms of the value. Next, we have inventories. Okay, so inventories macam stocks lah. If you your business relates dengan jual barang contohnya, so the stocks inventories tu is part of ni lah, dalam portion of inventories ni. Right, and lastly, prepaid expenses. So prepaid expenses, the name prepaid ni pun, meaning you pay your expenses upfront. You bayar awal ataupun before you utilize the service. The common example yang selalu guna lah, yang paling senang nak nampak is, for example, if you have rental expenses. Okay, you menyewa kedai, katakan you have a business and you rent a premise, a business center ataupun a shop lot katakan. Okay, so now ataupun today we are still just in April. Okay, but your company's punya policy, you akan bayar rental ni 1 year upfront. Okay, setahun upfront. So the amount yang you pay upfront tu akan masuk dalam prepaid expenses. So maknanya sekarang baru April kan, so maknanya you dah bayar sampai December nanti. So amount from May until December, dia akan masuk dalam prepaid expenses because you pay the expenses upfront. Okay, it will be part of your assets. Okay, sebab the value tu you dah utilize upfront. Okay, so that's prepaid expenses lah. The name prepaid ni maksud you bayar awal ataupun upfront. Okay, before the actual expenses occur. Sepatutnya bulan 5 belum lagi you tak bayar-bayar, but you already paid for it. So that's under prepaid expenses. Okay, so this is basically the first category lah, current assets. Saya tulis tadi. So the second is fixed assets. So we have plant and machinery, land and buildings, macam cakap tadi lah. Motor vehicles, you boleh add on kat sini, motor vehicles. All of these are fixed assets. Assets yang either acquired or to convert into cash within 5 years. It's not easy to liquidate, dia perlu masa, and also nak acquire pun perlukan tempoh yang panjang, more than 1 year. Motor vehicle contohnya nak beli, nak acquire kena guna hire purchase, let's say 5 years. So it's more than 1 year already, so dia akan masuk dalam fixed assets. Okay. The third category is current liabilities. So here we have account payable. Okay, account payable ni is opposite of account receivable. Kalau receivable tadi, it means that we do sales and our customer owe us money sebab dia tak bayar lagi. But here, account payable means we are the one who buy our stocks, for example, from our suppliers, and we are the one who haven't paid for it yet. So maknanya ni kita yang berhutang, nama pun current liabilities kan. So we are the one who owe money to our supplier, usually our supplier lah. So account payable indicates that the amount of money that we owe our suppliers usually. Okay, and we need to settle them as soon as possible lah, ataupun maximum 1 year. Okay, maximum 1 year. Next is notes payable. So notes payable ni sebenarnya adalah short term borrowings. Okay, pinjaman jangka pendek. You need to borrow money from the banks, for example. So this amount is part of notes payable. Okay, notes payable comes from external parties lah. We can borrow from banks or any other institutions. And lastly, accruals. It's also known as AKA, also known as accrued expenses. So earlier we have prepaid expenses under current assets. For current liabilities, we have accrued expenses or accruals. So what does it mean? Accrued expenses is the opposite of prepaid. If prepaid, we pay upfront. For accrued, still part of liabilities. Can you imagine lah, this is hutang. So maksud, we don't pay the expenses yet, even though we already utilize the service. For example, I use the same rental example. Kalau tadi, under current assets, the company pay upfront until December. So from May onwards will be prepaid expenses. But for accrued expenses, it means anything outstanding. So meaning, today is April, katakanlah, ni worst case scenario lah. Until now, from January, you tak bayar langsung lagi your rental. So you have 4 months of outstanding. Okay, kalau kat bank tu dah kena tarik kan. But let's say lah, you hutang dengan landlord of your business shop lots tu, you dah 4 months tak bayar. Okay, until April. So those 4 months of rentals will be parked under accrued expenses. You dah pakai, you utilize the service, tapi you tak bayar lagi. So accrued here refers to outstanding. You don't pay for it yet. Okay, and you have to obviously to pay immediately ataupun maximum within 1 year. Right, so that's the third category, current liabilities. The fourth one actually long-term liabilities. Okay, number 4. So long-term liabilities, we have long-term debts. Okay, sometimes they may use mortgage kat sini. Apa lagi? Mortgage. Sometimes they use the word debentures kat sini. Debentures ni sebenarnya part of bond. Okay, bond dengan debentures ni subcategory of bond. Bond ni is the main product. Dalam bond dia ada debentures. Okay, so technically these are the same. Cuma dia kadang-kadang guna terms yang berbeza lah. So when they use debentures, you know it must be bond juga. Okay, kadang-kadang ada term loan, long term loan lah selalunya. Loan jangka panjang. Right, so all of these are part of long-term liabilities. And if you remember, long-term liability means due that you have to pay more than 1 year, long-term basis. Okay, ventures, bond, mortgages, term loans. Right, so these are the fourth category, long-term liabilities. And finally, the fifth one is equity. Okay, ada tulis dia, common stock, preferred stock, retained earnings. Satu lagi, maybe you can add on capital kat sini. Capital also, especially the initial capital when they started off their business, so they need to invest their money kan. So that capital also can be part of common equity kalau ada. Okay, so these are the common. So under equity, we don't have categories. Dia tak ada short term ke long term, tak ada. Everything will be part of equity. And these are the terms yang selalu ada lah. Common stock, preferred stock, retaining and also capital. So this is one example that I took dah lama lah, 2010, 2011, 2012, I can't remember. The actual, how the statement of financial position looks like. Okay, first the name, dia memang guna perkataan statement of financial position. Okay, this is the name of the company. Right. And kalau dalam my notes tadi, the structure of the financial position ataupun the balance sheet is T accounts. So horizontal, assets one side, liabilities and equity on the other side. But here you can see dia punya positioning, assets on top, liabilities and equity at the bottom. This is more on the vertical format, atas dengan bawah. But somehow dia akan split between current dengan non-current, similarly like liabilities jugalah. Okay, cuma because this is banks, okay, that's why banks might have a different structure in their statement of financial positions. Okay, kalau you buka financial position of other companies, they will have here group and also company kat sini. Instead of bank, dia akan guna perkataan company kat sini. And for every statements, they will provide you with group data and bank data ataupun company data, and you have 2 years of information, current year and also the previous year. Alright, so for your assignment later on, I suggest you to use the group punya information when you want to do the analysis. But group punya information selalunya lagi banyak lah. Information is lagi details. Okay, walaupun some maybe sama information dia. Ada yang sama macam contohnya ni lah. You can see here, yang ni, amount ni dengan yang ni sama. Tapi ada a certain amount, it's more here. Kadang-kadang So to be consistent, you're going to use the group punya information. Okay, the groups punya information. And on top of that, they have notes kat sini. The note ni So what does this note provide to us? Okay, pasal numbering kat tepi ni. So these are the details. If you want to see the details, for example, kat dalam ni dia ada tulis financing, advances and other receivables. So dalam bank punya business, financing ataupun loans yang diberi kepada customer is part of their assets. But if you want to see what kind of loans, you need to refer dalam notes number 9 ni lah. So you kena buka notes of the account. Okay, notes of the account. And tengoklah dekat note number 9, what are the details of the financing. Okay, so bila nanti kan buat tu jangan terkejut asal tak account dia bukan macam ni bentuk dia. You will see something like this format dia. Okay, but for us we still use this one lah untuk because it's shorter ataupun you can compact it dalam satu statement, dalam satu page. Untuk ni kalau nak tulis ni tak cukup satu page ni selalunya. Okay, ni ada compress, but usually we have a lot of transaction records kan kalau vertically. So we might have longer pages lah, especially kalau dalam exams. Okay, so that's why we still prefer using this one. But in real life, like I said, you're gonna see something like this. Okay, supaya ada cerita tadi lah, assets, the non-current ones, ada example kat situ. The liabilities also, the dues, payable with 1 year and so on, semua ada cerita. Long-term liabilities as well, examples pun dah letak tadi, term loans, debentures, bonds, mortgages, or lease mungkin tak tambah kat sini lah. And equity, okay, finance obtained from the owners. Third, kita ada common, kita ada retaining, and also capital. Right. So this is the format of income statement. Sorry, balance sheet, sorry. So that's balance sheet. Sorry, balance sheet dah habis. Our first statement. Now kita nak tengok our second statement, which is the income statement. Kalau you ingat ataupun you can recall earlier, income statement is actually the movement between inflows and outflows, and at the end we're going to see whether the company makes profit or loss. Okay, similarly, they're going to use 1 year period information, so dia akan sync. Kalau tadi balance sheet ends 31st December, our income statement will end 31st December as well. Okay, same time period. Okay, so here the three general information we're going to record ataupun we're going to see the revenues, which includes all the incomes, okay, sales and other incomes. Then we will deduct all the costs and expenses, okay, expenses that kita guna use or consume in the process of generating the revenues. We're going to use for salaries, for admin expenses, transportation, whatever lah related to the business that you need to pay and incurred because of the nature of the business, part of the costs and expenses lah. So revenues will be inflows. So this would be the outflows, the costs and expenses. And the difference between the two will determine whether you get the profits or loss. Okay, after subtracting the revenues from your, subtracting expenses from the revenues. Revenues minus costs, expenses, you get profit or loss. But we want to see now in detail the items. So these are the items that you will see in the income statement. We will start usually from the very top. Our first item, this one, sales and revenue. Okay, sales and revenue will be our very first item dalam income statement. So for this sales and revenue, it can consist either you do cash sales or even credit sales. So even though you jual secara kredit, customer tak bayar lagi, okay, you still record under sales and revenue. Okay, doesn't matter whether it's cash or credit basis. Okay, apa nak guna example ini? Okay, I guna example of a pen here lah, pen. Let's say this pen I jual pada harga RM2. RM2 tak apalah, RM2 katakanlah. This pen I will sell for RM2. So this RM2 per unit, I akan record it dalam sales and revenue because this is my selling price kan, RM2. So let's say if I sell 100,000 of this, so RM2 times 100,000, so I have 200,000 worth of sales. Okay, 200,000. Okay, RM2 satu, I jual 100,000 units. So I have a 200,000 worth of revenues. Okay, that's number one. And in order to sell this, it's either I manufacture ataupun I can buy this from my suppliers. Katakanlah I tak buat pen ni, tapi I buy from my suppliers. And the cost of this from my suppliers, let's say, I don't know, for easier calculation 50 cents katakan. Satu batang pensel ni, it's 50 cents per unit. So 50 cents multiply with 100,000 that I sold, berapa tu? 50,000 lah. 50,000 ringgit is my cost. So that is what is meant by cost of goods sold ataupun COGS ni. It's either cost to produce ataupun cost to acquire. Okay, in our case tadi, I tak produce I just acquire from my supplier, I bayar dia 50 cent each. And that is the cost of goods that I sold here. So when I have this sales revenue tadi 200,000 RM2 times 100,000 is 200,000, and the cost of goods sold is 50 cent each times 100,000 is 50,000. So I have 150,000. Okay, sales tadi example I letak 200,000 and this is 50,000 contohnya. I will have my first level of profit, which is known as gross profit. Okay, this is my first level of profit, gross profit. So how I get this gross profit? My sales or revenue minus the cost of goods sold. Then I get the gross profit. Untung kasar. Okay, which is 150,000 dalam case ni lah. 150,000. So next, once I have this gross profit, I'm gonna deduct all other expenses, which is the operating expenses, cost for my day-to-day operations. Okay, here I letak marketing, administration, you boleh tambah lah items like personnel ataupun labor cost. What else? Utilities kalau ada, if you have to pay utilities kan, electricity, water, internet, whatever lah. Transportation, logistic, whatever you have to pay in order for you to run your business. Semua ni masuk dalam operating expenses. So once you have all these operating expenses, you deduct from your gross profit, you akan dapat a second level of profit, which is known as operating profits. Okay, tadi operating expenses kan. So after we deduct operating expenses, we get operating profit. Or sometimes it's also known as EBIT. Okay, earning before interest and taxes. Okay, earning before interest and taxes. Okay. Earning. Yeah, earning before interest and taxes. So this is our second level of profits. So next, after we have this, we're going to deduct interest pula. Okay, interest kat mana? Is part of EBIT ni tadi. Earning before interest and taxes kan. So now we minus interest, which is the financing cost. So for those yang ambil conventional punya loans, then you can bayar interest lah. But for banks, for Islamic, dia tak bayar interest kan. Sometimes you can use, you can see the word financing cost, finance cost, okay, which refers to interest kat sini. Okay, so after we deduct interest, now we have the third level, which is known as EBT, earning before tax, because interest we already paid kat sini. We paid interest, then we left with EBT. Okay, earning before taxes. Next, after we have EBT, we have to deduct tax pula. And these tax expenses is based on our EBT amount. Okay, macam income tax jugalah. If we have, ataupun if you declare your income tax punya liability tu kan, ataupun income tax punya punya apa ya, income tax declaration tu kan, you kena declare, then you kena file, kita panggil filing kan, you have to file for your income tax kan. Kan kita ada income first, and then kita tolak all the reliefs. Okay, baru kita dapat chargeable income. And your income tax tu akan di-charge based on your chargeable income. Not on the gross income yang you dapat tu, sebab you ada reliefs kan. You minus all the reliefs first, then you dapat chargeable income. That chargeable income is actually income yang akan dikenakan tax. Similarly for business, they don't have chargeable income lah, tapi they have what we call as earning before tax. So this EBT ni akan menentukan berapa income tax yang dia perlu bayar. Okay, not based on gross, not based on EBIT, but based on EBT. Okay, so once they have EBT, dia akan bayar tax. Okay, payment to government, kalau in Malaysia, obviously it's payable via LHDN lah. Okay, and once they paid for this, kita akan dapat the fourth level, which is earning after tax ataupun the net income. Okay, kadang-kadang dipanggil net profit juga. Sama je it's all the same thing. So net income, net profit, or earning after tax. Okay, all refers to the same thing. And this amount will be distributed to the shareholders. What does it mean by distribution to shareholders? For the net income, okay, once the company declare their net income, this net income akan pecah kepada dua. First, they will pay dividend. That's why they panggil distribute to shareholders tadi. They distribute in the form of dividend. They will pay dividend to the shareholders. But not all. Okay, but not all. Partial ataupun a portion of this net income, dia akan bayar dividend to the shareholders. But what happened to the rest of the money? Dia akan masuk dalam retained earnings. If you remember dalam balance sheet tadi, bear with me one second. Dalam owner's equity tadi kan, balance sheet, kita ada retained earning ni kan. So this retained earning is coming from the net profit. Okay, coming from the net profit of the company. So dia akan so dari net income ni dia akan bayar dividend to the shareholders. So the balance dia akan masuk rekening. So for example kalau net income dia 10 million, so kalau dia bayar dividend 3 million here, so we know the 7 million will be parked ataupun will be transferred into retained earnings. Okay, for their reinvestment in the company lah. Okay, so company needs money kan, capital, so this will be part of the money to their operations. Okay, maybe you can add sebenarnya under lepas tax ni, you can add one more. Some companies may pay zakat juga. Okay, kalau company tu bayar zakat, dia akan bayar sama lah. Sebenarnya zakat selalu sebelum tax tadi . So it will look something like this. Okay, revenues on top, then minus the cost of goods sold, dapat gross, minus operating expenses, dapat operating income ataupun EBIT, minus interest, dapat EBT, minus tax, dapat net income, and then they will pay dividend, as I showed earlier, then balance masuk dalam retained earnings. Okay, that's how the statements looks like lah. For real life, sorry. Okay, I still use the same company, Prepaid Finance House. The income statement, they use the word income statements here. Still ada groups. Cuma dalam ni dia bank sebab dia bank. Sometimes you're gonna see company dekat sini. And sini lah dia records all the incomes. And then the expenses kat sini, personnel, overhead. So in details you kena tengok kat notes kalau nak tengok. And then dia ada finance cost juga. And then for this company, dia loss . Loss. After they deduct all the income dengan expenses, dia dapat loss. Loss before zakat and taxation. So dia punya terms, dia ada bayar zakat kat sini. And then ada tax juga. And then dia ada loss of the year lah. Dalam case ni dia loss. Okay, so that's the two statements that I want to share with you. Okay, the balance sheet and also the income statement. Ada soalan nak tanya before we go into topic 3 dah ni, which is the ratios.
Assalamualaikum, Sir.
Salam.
Saya Rizal.
Ya.
Sir, nanti recorder ni saya ada share ke macam mana?
Ya, ada.
Okay.
Tadi masa first session tadi ada tunjuk dalam future. This part dalam, if you look dalam online class, dalam schedule, dalam section you record your attendance, so akan ada satu section kat sini yang recorded link ni. So I will share macam ni last semester punya ni. So you can see the recorded session dekat dalam ni juga. So sekarang tu ni, so you can refer to here lah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Alright. Tadi dah tak record benda ni. I mean dah. Never mind. Just save tadi. Anyway, for topic number 3, this is where the actual calculations and analysis involved. Okay, the one for your assignment, group assignment tu is based on actually this topic, but to understand ataupun how to interpret, to calculate based on the previous two topics. Okay, so under this topic we have 3 subcategories ataupun 3 subtopics. The first part is actually to discuss the types of financial ratios, not only discussion. You'll be exposed with the calculation as well, how to calculate the financial ratios. And then we have the analysis, what kind of analysis that we have. And lastly, limitations of the financial ratios. Obviously, financial ratios is not to say it is complete ataupun free from errors. Okay, obviously there's some limitations juga for these financial ratios. So first, what is financial ratios? So financial ratio analysis involve analyzing, okay, most of the time current performance. Okay, but for this current performance, this is only can be utilized by the internal ataupun by the managers only. Okay, from internal people lah, internal users. So because they are the one who have this access for the current performance. We as external parties, we don't have this current performance sebab dia tak publish lagi. Okay, so these are unpublished information. So who have this access? Only internal or managers only. Okay, so they can use the internal, they can use the current data to manage ataupun to review the performance, the current performance. Okay, but for us, most of the people, we can measure based on the past performances, on the actual statement which are published. Okay, kalau dah publish, then we can use this information to do the financial ratios. And usually when we talk about publish, like I said earlier, it's always based on past performances. Like today, 2021 kan, I dah cakap tadi kot, the published data so far maybe up until 2019, or if you're lucky up until 2020 je. Because 2021 obviously tak habis lagi, we don't have the data. Some companies don't publish yet their 2020 data pun. Okay, so for 2019, most of company, I think 99.9% memang dah ada lah sepatutnya, because all the public listed companies needs to share or needs to publish their actual statements, right, to the public. Okay, so as of now, 2019 tu for sure dah ada lah. But for 2020, some maybe dah ada, some maybe not. Okay, so we are lacking in terms of current kat situ lah. So that's why for current performance, only applicable for internal users. And for the rest of the users, akan depends on past performances, right? So that's why the users of these financial statements can come from investors, which is from the external, the managers, which is the internals, and the other interested parties which want to analyze, macam you all lah, students contohnya, wants to do the financial ratios, we have to rely on the past performances to analyze and also interpret the firm's financial positions and also performance. Okay. And through this analysis, one is able to tell whether the company's position is good or not, healthy or not. And as internal managers, they can take appropriate action immediately. But that's why they need to measure performance of ratios ni based on current. Sebab if they can see any trend that, going downwards, contohnya, they can take actions lah. They can take corrective actions in order to improve their performance. Okay, cuma macam kalau kita tadi, we are not looking to take actions. We are just measuring their performance saja, sama ada they are good or not before we do investment, for example. Okay, because we are external, we don't do corrective actions. We just want to invest. All right, but for internal, they can use financial ratios to make corrective actions. So here you want to see the types. So we have 5 ratios kat sini. 5 categories of ratios. As I said, we don't have enough time to cover all 5 ratios, 5 categories of ratios. Okay. Let's see kejap lagi lah, as many as possible lah kita go through. So under liquidity ratios, we have 3 different ratios. Okay, leverage kita ada 3 lagi, and then like activity, if I'm not mistaken, we have 5 more. Profitability we have 6, market we have 6 or 7. So all in all, if you add, you have 20 something ratios. Okay, 20 something ratios to go through under the 5 categories of financial ratios. If we talk about exams before, walaupun 5 kategori, during the final exams, they will ask only up to 8 ratios sahaja during final exams. For your project, I tak decide lagi berapa. I think based on these 5, minimum maybe 10. Okay, but the difference between final exam dengan group assignment, final exam you can memorize, but for your group assignment, you don't have to worry about memorization because you always can refer kan. So for this financial ratios, expect at least daripada 5 categories ni 10 ratios. Okay, at least 10 ratios that you have to calculate and also analyze. Okay, so but let's look at the first one, liquidity. Okay, so liquidity ratios measures the liquidity or availability of the firm's liquid resources. Ada tulis kat sini tadi. Liquid resources refers to the current assets. Okay, remember assets are the resources to the company. And when we set liquid, it means assets yang can be converted into cash quickly, which is current assets. Okay, so we want to measure their current assets and we compare against the maturing liabilities. Okay, maturing liability means liabilities that due and payable within short term, which is the current liabilities, CL. All right, so here is the what we call the things that revolve in the liquidity ratios. Kita akan revolve around current assets and current liabilities only. Okay, no other elements will be part of these liquidity ratios. Right? As a basic rule, the higher the ratios for liquidity, the better. Okay, meaning when we calculate later on, kita akan buat comparison. So when we compare, the higher the ratio, the better the performance of the company. All right. However, if it's too excessive, when we say excessive, ni maknanya yang terlalu tinggi lah. When you calculate the ratios, you can see the results nanti. But if it's too excessive, it indicates that the company may invest too much in current assets. So meaning they have a high level of current assets. Remember, current asset ni is assets yang converted to cash quite easily. And when we talk about current assets selalunya diassociatekan dengan low returns. Low returns. So what does it mean by low returns? Yalah, invest in current assets akan generate low returns. Yang paling low, obviously, paling senang nak nampak is cash. Cash is part of current asset kan. So if you have too many cash, okay, sebab cash ni, cash is a non-earning asset. You ada 100,000, okay, you put in the vault, okay, you will still have 100,000 juga dalam account. Okay, so if you have too many cash around, this will be the cost for the excessive liquidity ni. So how to remove this excessiveness? You can reallocate. Maknanya cash yang you ada ni, jangan simpan dalam cash, dalam vault dia. You kena invest kat tempat lain in order to get more income to the company, more returns. So that's why if you have too many current assets, dia akan menyebabkan low returns and not productive enough. So therefore, you are selalunya encouraged ataupun recommended to move these current assets to the fixed assets. Okay. So here we have 3 ratios under the liquidity, current, quick, and also net working capital. And all revolve around current assets and current liabilities sahaja. So the first keyword untuk current ratio pun ada perkataan current kat sini. Okay, so ingatlah under current ratio, we're going to use current assets and current liabilities only. Okay, so later on for each ratios, for each categories, you're going to see first part is the explanation, second part is the formula, and the very bottom, you akan nampak suggested analysis ataupun comments that you can use for every ratios. Okay, for example, like this one, current ratio. So the first part is the explanation of the ratio, and then you have the formula. And at the very bottom here is the explanation. If you want to explain what does it mean of this ratio, you can use this one. Because for every ratio analysis, you can comment. You need to comment. You need to analyze. And this is the recommended ataupun some suggestion in terms of how to comment. All right. So current ratio is a measurement of short-term solvency and indicates that to extent the claims of short-term creditors are covered by current assets. So simply put, we want to see how much times does the current assets that the company have to cover the current liabilities. Okay, so the average ratio kat sini dia letak approximately 1.5 times, 1.5 kali ganda. The value of assets is more than the current liabilities. So the formula is current assets divided by current liabilities, and this is the explanation. Okay, the answer is in times, X ni times. So the higher the ratio reflects the ability to pay short-term obligations on time. Okay, so for this purpose, I'm going to use one past year question. Okay, one past year question. Okay, like I said, the final past year question that we have, the final past year was in December 2018. Ni yang terakhir kita ada. After that, everything was non-final exam. Okay, 5 questions. The very first question, always about financial ratios. Okay, always about financial ratios. So as I said, for financial ratios, I can provide with you the 2 statements, which is the statement of financial position. Okay, the statement of financial positions, and on top of that, they will give you a statement of financial performance ataupun income statement. So this is your income statement ni. Income statement. Right. And they will give you a set of ratios for your reference for comparison purposes. And then they bagi you the task, which is to compute and also to evaluate. So that's why the purpose of every comment at the bottom is for this purpose, to evaluate the performance. And they should evaluate based on the categories: liquidity, activity, profitability, and also leverage. Okay, so for these types of ratio, okay, you need to understand the items belong to which categories. Kalau macam income statement ni very straightforward lah. Everything here represent itself. Macam sales 800,000 ni, meaning that's the sales value lah. Cost of goods sold and so on. Okay, very straightforward. But for these balance sheets, remember we have 5 categories under balance sheet. In the notes, my PowerPoint notes tadi, they are the label for each current asset, fixed asset, current liabilities, long-term liabilities, and so on. But for this type of question, they don't provide you with such categories. So therefore, you need to know the items to belong to which categories. Okay, but the thing for this, dia tak akan mixed up ataupun dia tak akan jumble up dia punya information. Dia akan still sort accordingly, cuma without labels. So your task is basically to label them. So for example, we have cash, account receivable, inventories, prepaid expenses, and then a space, and then plant and equipment. So if you remember the items earlier, these 4 items belong to current assets. Okay, whereas these 2 belongs to fixed assets. Okay, and on the other side, kita ada accounts payable, accruals, notes payable, and then there are other current liabilities. And next, they have long-term debts. So you know already, long-term debt is not current liabilities. So therefore, the first 4 ni, this is your current liabilities. This is your long-term liabilities. And these 2, common stock and retained earnings, this is your equity. Okay, so that's your first task, to know which are parts of CA, FA, CL, LTL, or equity. Okay, so once you have this categorization, you can calculate ataupun compute the subtotal for each categories. So for example, for current assets, okay, so we have 25,000 plus 30,000 plus 50,000 plus 12,000. So we have a value of 117,000 for our current assets. So you just add all 4 items ni, which is part of fixed asset 117. So for fixed asset 250, so it's 250,000 kat sini. Okay, might be useful or might be not so far, tapi kita calculate je dulu. For current liabilities 20, 30, it's 44,000 here. Okay, 16 plus 4 plus 10 plus 14,000. So we have a current liabilities of 44,000. Long-term liabilities 120,000, one item sahaja. And for apa ni? For equity kita ada 30,300 plus 172,700. A total of 203,000 here for equity. Okay. So once we have this information, if you go back to the first ratio just now, which is to calculate the current ratio, and we need to know the current assets and the current liabilities, which we already calculated earlier. Okay, if you recall, tulis kat sini lah. I use a whiteboard kat sini, and I put back the question on the left like this. So this is for ABM motorists. So for every ratio, kita akan calculate based on the company performance, the company itself. So this ratio is for ABM motorist per head. Okay, so our first category is current ratio. Okay, current ratio, and the formula is current assets divided by current liabilities. Okay, based from the note study, formula there, current assets divided by current liabilities. And we already identified the current assets and the current liabilities. So simply take the values, 117,000 divided by 44,000. Okay, grab your calculator. Okay, just keep it 2 decimals. So you have here 2.66 times. Okay, 2.66 times. This is the answer. Okay, 2.66 times. And again, if you refer to the question, dia bagi you sini the industry average ratios. So the purpose of this industry average ratios is not the answer. This is not your answer. Jangan cakap, jawapan dia tak sama. Memang it's not meant to be sama. But this is your point of reference. This is where you compare your results against the industry average. Okay. So kita nak tengoklah performance company ni versus the industry. Is it better or worse, okay, than the industry average? So how to comment whether it's good or bad? But some ratios, the higher the better. Some other ratios, the lower the better. So if you remember tadi, for this first category, liquidity, the higher the ratios, the better the performance. Okay, so in this case, you can see ABM motorists current ratio is 2.66, the industry is 2.5. So we can see that the ABM motorists current ratio is better than the industry average. But how to translate into words? So that's why every ratio I dah letak comment kat bawah ni. So how to translate these results into words? You can letak something like this. Tak semestinya macam ni, tapi I just use this as an example. Okay, you boleh kata ABM motorist has, okay, the keyword is ability to pay, short-term obligation kan. You boleh kata has better ability to pay its short-term obligations on time. Okay, as compared to the industry average. Okay, so that's how we comment based on the results. Okay, so kita dah buat satu ratio. So all of this will give you around 3 marks. Kalau ada exam lah but don't worry about exam. Kita tak ada final exam kan, so you don't have to worry about this. But anyway, so this is how we do the computations and also to comment ataupun to analyze the results. Because this current ratio, the higher the better. So the ratio is higher than 2.5. Then we can say that this ABM Motorist has better ability. So always comment from the company's point of view. Katakanlah kebetulan when you calculate, dia dapat 2.4 katakan. Okay, 2.4. So when you compare dengan industry average is 2.5. So when you want to comment, you jangan cakap industry average has a better ability as compared to ABM Motorist. That's not the way to comment. Always comment from ABM Motorist point of view. Sebab kita calculate ABM Motorist ni. So therefore, you still start with ABM Motorist, but instead of better ability, you have to change lah the word less ability ataupun worse ability to pay its short obligation as compared to the industry average. So the subject still remain the same. Kita always comment on the subject matter, which is the ABM Motorist, the company. Tapi the performance can be better, can be worse or less. Okay, so tu je ayat yang you kena tambah ataupun tukar for every ratios. Okay, so don't change industry average as your subject sebab industry average is nothing. Apa maksud industry average dalam case ni kan? There's no such entity yang dipanggil industry average is just a number. Bila you dah average kan semua players in the industry, you get one figure. So there's is, I can say, useless subject lah because we don't have actual industry average. So the main subject here is this company. So always comment on the company's point of view. Okay, so that's our first ratio ini. Next, we have quick ratio. Okay, also known as acid test ratio. So this is the alternative name, acid test. Still revolve around current asset, current liabilities. However, these current assets, kita kena deduct or minus inventory and prepaid expenses. Why we need to deduct these two? Because inventories and prepaid expenses are considered as the least liquid asset. So we want to really test the company whether the company has ability to pay or not kalau dia tak ada these two elements, inventories and prepaid expenses. Okay, so still the answer in times, still the higher the better, indicates that they have the ability to pay short-term obligations, but now without relying on both elements, inventories and prepaid expenses. Okay, if we go back to our question earlier, Annie, we can calculate the quick ratio, number 2, quick ratio. Is by taking current assets with minus of inventory and prepaid expenses, and we divide with current liabilities. So the current liability is still the same. We're still going to use 44,000. Okay, but our numerator ni, current assets minus inventories, prepaid expenses. We already decided that our amount is 117,000 for the whole current assets, 117,000. However, we need to deduct inventories and prepaid expenses. So meaning these two will be eliminated from our current assets. So technically, if we remove inventories and prepaid expenses, we left with cash and account receivables only. So these two, if you add, it's just 55,000. Okay, just 55,000. So berapa ni? 55 divided by 44. So it will give you 1.25 times. Okay, 1.25 times. So again, you can look at the notes kat bawah ni. Okay. And you compare against the quick ratio in the question. So 1.2, 1.25 against the company's current ratio, quick ratio is slightly better as compared to the industry average. So you're gonna compare similar like earlier. So meaning you can say ABM Motorists has better ability to pay its short-term obligations on time without relying on inventories and prepaid expenses as compared to the industry average. So you tambah tu je. Okay, you just tambah this part je without relying on inventories and prepaid expenses. Okay, so the rest is still the same as current ratio. And lastly, number 3 is about net working capital. Okay, net working capital. Still, we're going to use current assets juga and also current liabilities, but this time around we minus. Okay, for current ratio tadi, we take current assets, we divide with current liabilities. But for net working capital, we minus. Okay, we minus. So net working capital indicates the amount of current assets minus with the current liabilities. So the higher the ringgit, the better. Which indicates greater margin of safety. So the answer will be in ringgit. Okay, kalau positive indicates good excess lah, ada excess of cash ataupun excess of current assets, and this is actually absolute measurements in terms of liquidity. But for the question just now, kalau you perasan the industry average tak ada net working capital. So what does it mean? If there's no indication kat dalam ni, meaning sepatutnya we don't have to calculate. You don't have to calculate the net working capital. So meaning we just calculate whatever we have point of reference sahaja. Okay, but for the sake of illustration purposes, I'm gonna share with you juga lah how to calculate. So our current asset just now tadi berapa? 170,000. And we minus with 44,000 current liabilities. So it's 73,000 ringgit. Is the excess ataupun the net working capital. Okay, the word net ni selepas tolak. Okay, when we say working capital is actually current assets saja. But to get the net working capital, we minus the current liabilities. Then we get a 73,000 absolute measurement of liquidity. Okay, so kalau tadi tu dalam bentuk ratio times, ni dalam bentuk ringgit. So dia ada excess 73,000 ringgit. Okay, so that's how we measure financial ratios. So kita sempat cover the first category saja. Okay, we recap balik kat sini. We've done the liquidity ratios. So we left with 4 other categories. We have leverage, activity ratios, profitability, and also market ratios. So all of this will be discussed again next week. Next meeting. So our next meeting will be 2 weeks from now, I think, 25th maybe. Right, masa tu dah puasa. So selamat puasa juga in advance. So I'll stop here for today. And as your friend asked just now, I will share the videos once it's available. I can share with you the link. And if there's any questions, you can ask me either dalam future boleh. If you have my number tadi, you can create a group and invite me together and ask me there. Ataupun email tu paling jarang lah guna kot. Okay. So thank you very much for your time. Just tengok any updates in your future for anything lah dari segi assignment, kalau ada quizzes, kalau ada, tapi selalunya I akan bagi tahu in advance lah. Okay. So ada soalan lah? Apa yang belum ada? Oh, okay, ada tanya pasal saya. Tanya buku dapat kat mana? Buku dapat kat mana The short answer will be dekat kedai buku. Tapi we have plenty of options. I can share with you some titles of the books kan yang mungkin, sebab I don't use any specific books during lessons. Okay, tapi kalau you insist on books, sebab some people nak study kena ada books contohnya. I can share with you certain topics lah, certain title of the books yang you boleh pakai, which the price is not that expensive and easier to read sebab dia punya tu local content. Sebab some buku dia international edition kan, so might not relevant to us. So mana nak dapat, it can be anywhere. Ada boleh beli online, cuma I akan share with you the titles je. Ataupun kalau you ada dapat buku from seniors ataupun you dah ada inherit some books, I don't know, from somebody, then you can share with me, boleh tak pakai buku ni, tengok topik dia relevant or not, then we can use the books. Okay, kalau tak ada buku, you have to rely heavily on my notes and also during lectures je lah, in terms of how to do the analysis and so on. Okay, nanti ingatkan balik kalau nak tanya pasal title buku. Okay, anything else nak tanya?
Tak ada setakat ini.
Alright. So again, thank you very much. Inshallah, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks' time for our second meeting. Right? Thank you and Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, sir.
Terima kasih, sir.
Right.
Thank you, Doktor.
Waalaikumsalam.
Right.
Terima kasih, Doktor.
Sama.